Hello, my name is Kimber Follevaag. Welcome to my home. I'm a fiber artist living in Spokane, Washington. I started probably doing fiber art because my mother was a seamstress, and that's where all the stitching and weaving came into play probably. She set the bug for that. Before that, I was a ballerina for 17 years, so I've always kind of had that, creative energy, always trying to find. And as you get older and ballet is not what you do anymore, I moved into fiber art. I've been doing it probably for, 30 years or so, maybe. So I'm going to age myself here. People ask me, they always ask me, why are you an artist? And I always say the exact same thing. I'm not sure why. I find it very difficult. I feel very vulnerable doing it, and yet I can hardly wait to start my next project. So that's just something inside of you has to have that creative outlet. And this particular piece, I had several. It was a big series. This is the last one. It was called the Industrial Series. And so what happened was my husband actually found these industrial photos that were going to be thrown away. He found them out in the hallway. He grabbed them and gave them to me, and they sat on the back burner in my head like, I need to do something with those. And so this is kind of my first, when I started using photography and fiber art together. And so I took the industrial photos, and then I took acrylic panels, and I did a template where I drilled hundreds and hundreds of holes. And then I tried to find whatever, I copied whatever came up in the series. It still pixelated it, but you can kind of see back there what it is. But at first glance, you cannot. This is the last one. They all sold. There's a couple hanging up at the Wandering Table. Jenny Hegstead and Alan Hegstead, they bought a couple for there. So you can check that out. So this series is what I call the Cage Doll series. I did it with another photographer, a friend of mine. It was a two-woman show, so it was a pretty big deal for us. I've always been in group shows before that. So we did the entire terrain gallery. And this, again, was a few years ago. And I'm going to read to you what we decided the show embodied and how we felt about it. The work in this exhibit explores two underlying themes: the barriers that we experience as women that have held us back, as well as the personal power that we draw on as women when we flourish. Historically, power has been associated with force, but is now undergoing a transformation and is being seen as the ability to make a difference in the world by enhancing the lives of others. And I love that. I love that we're transitioning from brute force to having power, to thinking, how can I help you helps me? And so that's what the series is all about. And what I did, again, this is using photography. She would take the photo, and then I would do a photo transfer. And I would take the girl, and you have to rub off the paper. And actually, I rubbed so hard, I lost my fingerprint, I couldn't open my phone. Just weeks and weeks and months of getting these photos. And this part, the cage, is from back in the day, and I saw this when we were in Portugal. They had the cage dolls, and they would take they would make the wooden top part, and they would they have the cage, they could change out the skirt, and they would put these through the town, and people would worship the cage dolls. They would represent different saints or different, worship. And and that always struck me that, Cage was being on a doll and being promoted as someone that you wanted to worship, yet we were all being held back so much. So there's those things. So we decided to go with this series. And this was also, these are called corset cross stitch. These are also part of the Cage Doll gallery show, and they're felt. I bought from New England. I got these felt squares. They're industrial felt, and then I went down to Gizmo and worked with a guy, and we laser cut all the holes through all these panels, and then I would stitch them. It's representational type of art because it goes with the cage doll. Corsets, of course, were worn by women, and they would cinch so tight that it would not allow for the lungs to fill at the bottom of your lungs, and so they would faint. They had fainting couches, and yeah, another thing that we think we're doing something to enhance women appearance, and yet incarcerating ourselves at the same time, you know, something we need to stop doing. And so anyway, that's what these corset cross stitch are all about. And there's some from here, a retail store that helps artists in our area, and yeah. Okay, this series is called the Steiglick Museum Series. We were in Amsterdam at the museum, and of course I looked at the artwork, but I also was taking pictures of people looking at the artwork. Again, this is my attempt to incorporate photos with fiber art. So it's kind of my way of photoshopping with fiber, and it's a collage. Of course, this lady wasn't in the museum, so I cut her out, put it on. There's a lot of stitching going on. I would drill the holes in the acrylic like I did in the other series, and then embroider through the holes and stuff. So that's this series. Yeah. So this is called Variation of a Photo. It's one woman with a hat on, and I did 3 different variations with fiber art with it. These were actually at the Terrain show a few years back. Yeah, and so what I do again, have the photo, and then we drill the holes. This particular one has tiny, tiny French knots. It takes weeks to drill the holes and months to do the knotting. And again, I would just see what was underneath the photo and try to pull the fiber to match it. So it would pixelate it, disrupt it, but you could still tell what it is. This one actually has wire mesh, and I cut it out and then did kind of the same process. I would match what was coming up underneath. And so it's tiny little woven embroidery threads all throughout her face. And this one, I tried to play with a mirror behind it. Actually, if you get very close, I sliced the photo so that the mirror behind it, if you get close enough through her, you can see yourself. And there also is some stitched little French knots in this one as well. Okay. All right, and the current series that I'm working on are, I call them crosslines. They're not a narrative like some of my other work. However, I still think when I'm weaving these, and I'll explain that in a minute, that when you're putting one strand in, it's not so strong, but when we're woven together as a community, it creates a pattern and just togetherness and a force and empowerment, right? So these, what I do is I usually take, not all, pretty much all of these. I take old silk screen frames and I cut the silk screen out. And then you wrap them one way and then you weave them the other way. And so it creates these patterns and colors, and yeah, the textural quality of them I really enjoy. They're fun to make, actually. Yeah, so that's the Crossline series. So I love creating art, but I also thoroughly enjoy supporting other artists as well. And I enjoy seeing their work in my home. So we have a variety of artwork from all over the world, actually, and even local artists as well. So this painting, along with the painting over there and one in the kitchen, are all done by the same artist, by an artist named Nicole Teflinger. It was a French woman, and the story goes, I think she actually wrote a book, and the story goes that she was in a little French village back during World War II, young girl, and a guy, a pilot, was looking for places to land airplanes, an American pilot. And he landed in this field, and of course all the village rushed out to see this American pilot, and her girlfriends dared her to kiss him. Hence, that's how she got to America. And she was a professor, an art teacher down in Pullman. Down in Pullman. I think her husband became a professor as well, an engineer. They had several children, And when she passed, the children took, of course, the artwork that they wanted, and then the rest, a gallery by the name of Left Bank down in, is it Pullman? Yeah, Pullman, Washington. I don't know, Washington. Left Bank. They had all her pieces, and we got to pick out a few, and I just love them. And yeah, I love the story, and yeah, and this one's called For My Love. She did a lot for her husband, and so that's that story. If you're interested in any of my artwork, I have a Facebook page, Kimber Follevaag, or I have another Facebook page called Kimber Handmade. I also have an Instagram account called Kimber Handmade, and you can just direct message me if you're interested in any of the artwork. Thank you and happy holidays.